Hello and good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Chris Steyerwalt, filling in for the Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation.
They were up like double, triple, and you couldn't get any. They said, you won't have eggs for Easter. Well, you can have all the eggs you want.
Live it up. President Trump observing this Good Friday in the Oval Office earlier today as he swore in Dr. Mehmet Oz as the top administrator for Medicare and Medicaid. But the personnel change making headlines was across town. The president fired yet another acting head of the Internal Revenue Service, the fifth leader of the agency so far this year. Reports say Gary Shapley got the boot after only 2 days on the job when his boss, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, complained that top Trump advisor Elon Musk had put Shapley in the job without his approval. Plus, we're watching the intensifying standoff between the Trump administration and the courts after an appellate court swatted down an administration move to get out from under a judge's order in an increasingly contentious deportation case.
That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. We got a little biography of him.
Did you help set up that?
Not a very innocent guy.
Republicans and Democrats are making pilgrimage to the Salvadorian prison camp where Kilmar Abrego Garcia is being held. GOPers to boost the administration's position, while Democrats call it a mission of mercy. Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland returning to the U.S. just moments ago after meeting with Garcia.
This case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America.
And across the globe, Vice President J.D. Vance attending a Good Friday service at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome after meeting with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. But we start tonight with an update on the tragic shooting at Florida State University as we continue to learn more about the suspect. NewsNation correspondent Brooke Schaefer is on the ground with the latest. Brooke, what do we know tonight?
Well, Chris, we're learning more about the two people killed in this shooting at FSU. As you can see behind me, there are dozens of flowers, lots of students coming by this area near the Student Union to pay their respects. Not far from us, just outside of the football stadium, also here on campus, there was a vigil about an hour ago. Hundreds of students showed up to that area to pay their respects. Florida State's president moments ago calling this a terrible act of violence. Meantime, as we mentioned, we're learning more about these two victims. One of the people killed, a 45-year-old dad of two. The family's lawyer naming him as Tiru Chaba. They say he's from South Carolina, and he was apparently here on FSU's campus yesterday as an employee of a campus vendor. This second victim has been identified as Robert Morales. FSU's president said that he worked here on campus for about a decade, and he's really being remembered for his acts of kindness. Meantime, as the investigation continues today, police are still looking into a possible motive. They have ID'd this suspected shooter as 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner. He is a Florida State student and also the stepson of a local sheriff's deputy. Police say he actually used his stepmom's handgun in this shooting. We spoke with a fellow classmate who told us that Eichner was known for spewing hateful white supremacist talk.
I was president of a political talk group at Tallahassee State College, which he was a member of, and he was known for espousing white supremacist and alt-right rhetoric to the extent where we had to ask him to leave. And it's my understanding that at some point he was allowed back after I came to Florida State, where he continued to push white supremacist rhetoric.
Law enforcement today released a timeline of yesterday's shooting, which happened around lunchtime at the Student Union, around 11:56 a.m. Eastern. The whole event took roughly 4 minutes from the first shots to police taking that alleged shooter into custody. 6 people were hurt and taken to the hospital. Doctors said today they expect all 6 to make a full recovery. Chris?
Oh, gosh. Brooke, we appreciate you. Thanks very much this Friday evening. Turning now to the ongoing legal drama around the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. White House correspondent Libby Dean is tracking the court battle and the battle in the court of public opinion as Senator Chris Van Hollen returns from a visit to that infamous Salvadoran prison. Libby, what's the latest?
Hey, Chris, not only is Kilmar Abrego-Garcia's return being battled out in the courts, we're actually learning that Judge Boasberg has called an emergency hearing in about 30 minutes in this, but it's also becoming this PR battle between the White House and Democrats. We've seen that play out through the last few days, but Senator Van Hollen, he's the first person who met with Abrego-Garcia since his deportation back in March. Now, Van Hollen returned to the U.S. earlier this afternoon and said that getting this meeting actually wasn't easy, and he also laid out what Garcia told him during this meeting about his deportation, and in the subsequent days since, he learned that he's been moved to a separate prison in El Salvador. Now, as for the White House's reaction, President Trump kicked off his morning calling the senator a fool and continued to criticize him throughout the day, just weighing in on Truth Social minutes ago. But let's listen to what President Trump had to say in the Oval Office earlier this afternoon.
Look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. I don't know why you'd want to keep him, but we got a little biography of him. Not a very innocent guy.
Now, more Democrats are planning to travel to El Salvador. They vowed to make a visit there. But this is, of course, the Supreme Court has also ordered the Trump administration to return Abrego-Garcia or facilitate the return of Abrego-Garcia to the United States. But the White House saying that is absolutely not going to happen. And we've continued to hear that play out through the week. President Trump just saying that once again on Truth Social as well, Chris.
Oh, Libby, thank you for the update. We're going to keep track of it. You keep us up to date. Now, let's take the pulse of America on this question. NewsNation has hit the road to attend town halls hosted by both Republicans and Democrats to get a sense of the conversation. Our own Joe Khalil attended freshman Democratic Congresswoman Hillary Scholten's town hall in beautiful Grand Rapids, Michigan, a lovely place to be on a Good Friday. He joins us now. Joe, what's the vibe out there?
So I got to tell you, a couple things surprised me, Chris. One is if you thought, you were under the impression that this fervor among Democratic voters that we saw a whole lot of back in end of January, early February, pushing their members to fight harder, to do more to combat what these Democratic voters didn't like about President Trump's administration changing federal law, that has not subsided at all. Virtually every single question that was asked of Congresswoman Scholten last night focused on Democrats being angry at the Democratic Party, wanting them to do more. And this is not an area that is heavily Democratic dominated. As you know, Grand Rapids is a pretty purplish region. It's bipartisan. They've had Republicans here before. The other thing that surprised me was how much people asked about the rule of law and about Abrego-Garcia's case specifically. Honestly, I was expecting a bit more locally focused issues. That wasn't really the case at all. Again, virtually every question went back to why aren't Democrats fighting harder? One woman even saying that they should take a page out of Republicans' book and be more tactical about pushing their policy forward. Chris.
Joe Khalil, I hope you have a great time out there. Those are some very nice folks in Grand Rapids, so I hope you have a ball. And we'll see you back here soon. President Trump's huge tariff hike sent markets tumbling. But when he paused some of the taxes on imports for 90 days, stocks temporarily surged, even in a down market. Some people made out like bandits. Democrats in Congress are raising questions about who profited, and they are zeroing in on Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Here's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
We saw Marjorie Taylor Greene buy that dip. Question for her: how much did you make? How much did you make off of people's despair? How much did you make off that panic? How much did you make off of that suffering?
You get the sense maybe they don't like her. But those Republicans who have long opposed market moves by members who regulate the industries in which they are investing are adding some bipartisan swag to the effort. Pennsylvania Republican Scott Perry saying, quote, members of Congress and their spouses should be banned from owning or trading stocks, bonds, commodities, futures, or any other form of security, period. Perry has joined our next guest, Ohio Democrat Greg Landsman, as a co-sponsor of what they're calling the Trust in Congress Act, which would require congressional members and their families to place certain investment into blind trust while they're in office. He joins us now. Congressman, thanks for making time for us this Good Friday. Your legislation is focused on changing the rules going forward. But do you think there should be an investigation into those tariff trades?
Sure, of course. I mean, anytime that public trust is on the line, and clearly it is, there should be an investigation, get to the bottom of it, see if someone did something wrong. And if they did, they should be held accountable. But members of Congress should get out of the business of buying and selling stocks. I'm in the process of literally selling all of our stocks so that I can move our assets into a blind trust or a mutual fund, whatever it is, that complies with the law, where I'm not involved in any of the trades. I don't make any of the decisions now, but I don't want the appearance. So I'm preempting the law in the sense that I'm going to go ahead and follow the law, even though it hasn't passed yet.
Okay, we went through this last decade. The Stock Act, we went through this. There was a big outcry. There was all this stuff. We're going to have the Stock Act. We're going to do it. And nothing changed, right? It didn't seem like much changed. It often devolves into partisanship. What's different this time? Is there something different about this push than the last time around?
I hope so. I mean, I think that people are much more vocal about their opposition to the role money plays in politics in general, but in particular, the idea that members of Congress would be buying and trading stocks using information that they have from their committee, or just, by being a member of Congress. And so the only way to ensure that folks trust us is to stop buying and trading stocks.
Okay. So the counter argument to this is that $174,000, I think, is what the base salary for a member of Congress is. That ain't what it used to be. And if you want people to serve in Congress, and you want the best and the brightest to come, people who are in the prime earning ages, if you take away their ability to invest and increase their net worth for the time that they're in Congress, we will miss out on some of the... It is no secret that we don't need any more brain drain in Congress, right? So if we're keeping some of the best people out of serving if they can't invest while they're here, how about that?
Yeah, but that's why the blind trust or a mutual fund or managed funds make sense. Like, I'm not pulling my money out of the market. I'm just moving everything from stocks, selling all of that, and moving it into mutual funds, managed funds, so that there is no longer a question as to whether or not I'm buying and selling stocks based on something I may or may not know. And so, no, folks can still invest. They just have to do it through a managed fund.
Oh, there he is. All right. Okay. If you were from Blue Ash, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is. Congressman Greg Landsman, we thank you and happy Easter. Coming up, we know Donald Trump loves the Golden Arches, but what about a Golden Dome? When we come back, we'll talk to a retired Air Force general about the big idea and the big price tag behind the missile shield. Plus, as Republicans scramble for ways to fill the gaps in their budget proposal, some are borrowing a page from the progressive playbook, tax the rich. We'll hear from a Republican on the key tax writing committee about what's next. Stay with us. You're watching The Hill. The Hill. Should the United States spend potentially trillions of dollars to build a continent-straddling Golden Dome missile shield modeled on Israel's famous Iron Dome? It's a pet project for the Trump administration, and a report this week suggested that SpaceX, the company run by top White House advisor Elon Musk, was the leading contender to get the contract. Not so, says Dr. Doge. Musk posting, quote, SpaceX has not tried to bid for any contract in this regard. Our strong preference would be to stay focused on taking humanity to Mars. If the president asks us to help in this regard, we will do so. But I hope that other companies, not SpaceX, can do this. This raises the question whether or not you think we should build this system. Can it be done? Joining us now is retired Air Force Brigadier General John Teichert. General, question. I'm old enough that I remember when Ronald Reagan used Star Wars, right, the Strategic Defense Initiative, to sort of end the Cold War, right? He increased the leverage against the Soviets, and they became afraid that we would be impermeable and that really helped tip the balance. But we didn't have the technology to really do it. Do we really have the technology to do this now?
Chris, we've seen in Israel that they have their own Iron Dome, or a layered system of defense, that has allowed them to respond to ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, aircraft, and drones. I realize that we're 100 times bigger than Israel.
Israel is about the size of New Jersey.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep, and so that makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
The idea that the number one job of the Defense Department is homeland security is one that is noble.
Yeah.
The question is, can we do this thing that President Trump wants us to be able to do with the technology that we have in a way that is actually reasonable so that it doesn't shrink or dwarf the rest of the DoD budget?
I know that you can't compromise any secrets, but we've got some stuff, right? I think most Americans figure that we have some means to intercept or shoot down missiles heading for the United States as it is, right?
We do. And the question is then, are we willing to scale that up so we can protect all of America? And is there something that is on the near horizon, like those lasers from Star Wars in the 1980s, that give us the wholesale capability to take care of our homeland, regardless of where those missiles come from and regardless of where they're going?
And so this is so you use the term multi-layered. So this is ground, air, space. This would have to be a multidisciplinary approach, right?
It would, and it would require us then to have sensors and shooters and the ability to integrate all of those things together to take care of every possible threat that includes ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, aircraft, and drones.
So it could be, I saw estimates as much as $5 trillion, which seems like an awful lot of money. And the time horizon on this, we'd be talking about years and years. So it's trillions of dollars and years and years and years to do it. Is that a good investment?
It makes sense to start if we're going to head down this pathway, scaling so that you protect cities like Washington, D.C., or major strategic areas. And then hopefully as you're working on those limited geographic areas, that we find a breakthrough in technology that can allow us to do this thing like directed energy at far less cost than $5 trillion.
Oh, that sound you hear is the noise of humming across the river at all of the defense contractors right across the river. They're saying, we like the sound of that. This would be a big project. General, we appreciate your time. Thank you for being here, and have a wonderful Easter.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, there's still much more ahead on the Hill. Heck yeah, Republicans say that they are a populist party of the working class. Does that mean higher taxes for top earners? It's a popular concept, but one that goes against decades of GOP orthodoxy on, remember, no new taxes. A Republican member of the House committee wrestling with tax legislation joins us to discuss. Plus, from the IRS to the FTC to the DOJ and maybe the Federal Reserve, President Trump is slurping up Washington's alphabet soup. Mick Mulvaney will tell us whether it's going to end up with some indigestion. That's all coming up when The Hill returns. Welcome back. Chris Stirewalt filling in for our friend Blake Berman. A live look there at a peaceful United States Capitol this evening. But when lawmakers return from their Easter recess, it's going to get rowdy in there as Republicans try to hammer out a deal on a multi-trillion-dollar tax and spending package. One idea gaining traction for how to fill in the big gaps in the plan is a mega tax on the mega rich. A top tax bracket of almost 40% on Americans making more than $1 million a year. It's essentially allowing the 2017 tax cuts to expire, but only for the highest earners. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who sits on the Finance Committee, has confirmed that debate is ongoing about what would be the first big Republican tax hike since George H.W. Bush got roasted for bad lip reading. But taxing the rich is popular with populists, and time is running short to meet the budget reconciliation deadline. So, with us now is Tennessee Republican David Kustoff, who sits on the House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, thank you for making time for us. Polls show again and again that most Americans would be happy for the wealthiest citizens to pay more, but that runs into conservative economic theories prevalent since the days of Ronald Reagan and Milton Friedman, trickle down and all that. Where are you on the question?
Yeah. I don't support increasing taxes on anyone. And thank you for having me on this evening. I don't support a tax increase on anyone. One reason I think that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that we passed in 2017 was so popular and so beneficial and so great for the economy was we lowered taxes for everyone. And I will say that one criticism, there were a lot of criticisms from the other side when we worked on this legislation 7-8 years ago, was that the revenues to the U.S. Treasury would decrease if we lowered taxes for everyone. We gave a deduction for small business. We lowered the corporate rate from 35 to 21%. That didn't happen. The revenues to the U.S. Treasury have increased since we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And the fact of the matter is that we need to incentivize everybody at all levels of the spectrum to continue to want to work, to continue to want to earn. In the end, it's a win-win. It's a win for the taxpayer, and it's a win for the U.S. Treasury.
Okay, but you have to do something. The Senate blueprint that just passed the House would add almost $6 trillion to the deficit over time, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. That's more than all the COVID stimulus and the first Trump tax cuts combined. The new report from DOJ says the savings they're going to come up with are a pittance compared to the original estimates. Where do you get that money, or do we just blow up the debt again?
Well, there are a number of issues. One is, do the tax cuts, are they extended permanently? Are they extended for a period of time? Is there a hodgepodge in there somewhere? There are a number of ways to pay for. Of course, one way that we used to pay for the tax cuts 8 years ago was to put a cap on state and local taxes, $10,000. So if you're in a state like I am in Tennessee, that doesn't really affect that many people, especially when you look at our state and nationwide. When we doubled the standard deduction, that almost 85 to 88% of the people filing taxes nationwide take the standard deduction. There is no doubt that there was an impact to the higher tax states like California, New York, what have you. But when we did that back 8 years ago, that paid for almost $1 trillion in tax cuts over 10 years. So my point is, there are a number of different things that we can look at rather than raise rates on high income earners. We're doing that. The Ways and Means Committee has been, at least the Republicans, we've been locked in a room for periods of time, literally over the last several months. We'll continue to do that. We're going to put a product on the House floor that I think will pass. And ultimately, when we talk about, Chris, this one big, beautiful bill, which not only includes the tax portion that you're talking to me about, but possibly border and energy and other things, when we take that vote and when it passes the House and when it passes the Senate, I think this will be the legacy for Donald Trump, not only in this term, but also in the first term, in its entirety of the 8 years.
All right, we heard it here first. Congressman, if you ever cleaned your plate, and it's good, at Commissary Barbecue in Germantown, Tennessee, you would know him already. But if you don't, there he is, Congressman David Kustoff. We thank you. So here's a question for you all. Can the president direct federal agencies to target institutions and individuals who oppose his policies? This week, the president added Harvard University to his enemies list, bringing down the hammer with the Justice Department, Internal Revenue Service, and freezing federal contracts for research at the school. The president wants Harvard to crack down on anti-Semitism, to prove that white and Asian students aren't being discriminated against, and to certify its academic programs meet the government's definition of ideological diversity. Harvard says it won't comply, and Trump says they'd better watch their wallets.
Tax exempt status, I mean, it's a privilege. It's really a privilege. And it's been abused by a lot more than Harvard. Very anti-Semitic when you take a look, whether it's Columbia, Harvard, Princeton. I don't know what's going on, but when you see how badly they've acted, and in other ways also. So we'll be looking at it very strongly.
Okay, the president fired yet another IRS acting director today, installing the fifth person to lead the agency so far this year. So the president Can the president tell the IRS who to hit and who to leave alone? Can he pick and choose? Here now, one who knows, former White House chief of staff, former director of the Office of Management and Budget, former congressman, all-around great guy, and a frustratingly good golfer, NewsNation political contributor Mick Mulvaney. Brother Mulvaney, a blessed Good Friday to you. When Richard,
and to you, my friend, Mr. Berman, you're looking much. I like your new ties. I like the new.
It's a stouter Berman.
Much better than usual.
It's a much stouter Berman. Okay, so whether it was Richard Nixon's enemies list in the IRS or Lois Lerner and the targeting of right-wing groups in the Obama administration, I thought we had a bipartisan consensus that the IRS needs to be politically independent. What am I missing here?
Well, I think you're missing part of the fact that I don't think anything is politically independent in Washington, D.C. And it's a really good question as to what parts of it should be. Part of this discussion, a big part of this discussion, is what authority does the president have as the chief executive? I keep going back again to, should the president of the United States, the chief executive, have the right to hire and fire the people that work for him? I think the answer has to be yes, and I think it has to be more so than he's got right now. Keep in mind, when I ran the CFPB, there were 1,700 people that worked for me. I had the ability to replace easily 7 of them. That's not right. That's a deep state type of existence. And I think that's part of what this entire debate is about. And it's not the first time, Chris, as you know, that presidents have had this type of debate over how much authority they have vis-a-vis the other branches of government.
Okay, I get the unitary executive argument, and I'm the Humphreys executor. Well, we could go long, but the producers will get very upset if we do. But I certainly see the argument that there is no constitutional basis for these quasi-independent agencies, right? That they're neither fish nor fowl. They're judicial, they're legislative, they're executive in function. What is an FCC anyway? What is an FTC? I get that. But how can it be that they would be at the beck and call of the president so the president could say, I want you to go get that person. I'm directing you to go hurt that person. That seems problematic. Doesn't it seem problematic?
That part does. Look, when I directed the CFPB, I was in the executive branch, but I also served as the final judge on a lot of different things before we moved over to the other court system. So I understand this sort of confusion about what these things are, but I think that's in one category. And whether or not you can use the government to go after your enemies is another. Look, what were the Republicans rightfully so upset about when the Democrats weaponized the branches of government to go against Donald Trump? I didn't like that very much. It's one of the reasons that Donald Trump is in office. Keep in mind, what was his mantra, Chris, back during the 2024 election? Look at what they're doing to me. I'm rich and famous. If they can do it to me, they can do it to you. Elect me, and I'll make sure that doesn't happen. And people did elect him, and now it's happening on the other side of the equation. At the same time, I do think there's something to be said. I wrote a piece in The Hill a year ago, said, what's wrong with a little revenge? What's wrong with applying the same standard? What's wrong with applying the same standard to the other side that's been applied to you? I think that is sort of the debate we're having right now.
What's wrong with a little revenge? The Mick Mulvaney's Good Friday message to you people out there. Holy crokinole. Mick Mulvaney, I hope you...
Okay, the timing on that may not have been the best, Chris. I'm sorry about that.
Mick Mulvaney, I hope you and your family have a wonderful, beautiful Easter together. Thanks for making time for us. Coming up, President Trump doubles down on his refusal to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back from a Salvadoran prison.
2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua.
He's on a collision course with the courts. The full panel joins us after the break. We'll talk all about it.
Yeah, and some of you may have just heard or felt that explosion.
Be advised, the fire department in the basement of the federal building. There's a children's center.
2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua, and maybe worse. They kill people with knives because it's more painful.
Welcome back to the Hill. That was President Trump earlier today railing against Mr. Abrego Garcia, the man mistakenly deported to a terrorism confinement center in El Salvador. President Trump expressed his thoughts about Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who just returned stateside after a trip to El Salvador to visit Garcia, calling the senator a fake and not really concerned about the prisoner. Just 2 hours ago, Van Hollen held a press conference upon his return.
No evidence before the court connects Abrego Garcia to MS-13 or any other criminal organization, unquote. In other words, put up in court or shut up.
And we heard this evening that there is yet another ruling in the underlying case, and the legal matters continue to escalate. But what we do know is that it's not going the way President Trump had originally envisioned. So let's bring in our panel for this evening, this wonderful Friday panel. You know Erin McGuire. She is a Republican strategist, former communications director for President Trump's 2020 campaign. Scott Bolden. He's not a Scott Bolden. He's the Scott Bolden. NewsNation political contributor and Democratic strategist. Say hello to Hannah Brandt. She is a political correspondent for Nextstar's Washington Bureau. Hello, hello. And my friend David Drucker. Holy crokinole. On a Friday, Drucker, senior writer for The Dispatch. Erin, the spin from the administration is this guy doesn't deserve due process. And if you say that he does, then you don't really want to deport people.
The spin from this White House is this is a man illegally in the United States who twice through court has been adjudicated to that he was given a deportation order and was wrongfully sent to the wrong country. That's what that is the White House take. Not that what Democrats' problem is with this right now is that they are talking about him as the Maryland man. They are trying to make him father. They're trying to make him an empathetic figure here when all Republicans have to do is say, this was a man whose wife tried to get a restraining order against him. This is a man who twice was adjudicated through the process, who was given a deportation order, was here illegally in the United States. What Chris Van Hollen did today was care more about a man illegally in the United States who was deported incorrectly to the wrong country. And what happened instead? Rachel Morin, an actual U.S. citizen, an actual constituent of his, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant. He didn't call her family. He didn't give two craps what happened to her. But this man, that's more important to him. So I don't really want to hear from Democrats.
We don't need PG-13.
You're going to hear from one Democrat. Check, 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 check. Got all of that, right? What's driving this narrative in this country, why the media and the Democrats are all over this, is because the government has admitted wrongdoing. And when you admit wrongdoing, as Judge Wilkinson said, you correct that because that's the American culture way and the law that requires it. Secondly, he got no due process whatsoever. Whether he's here legally or not, he's entitled to due process. And what scares all Americans about that is if we were wrongfully accused or rightfully accused, we would want due process.
This is what Democrats are saying, though.
Wait, that's the law. That's required. The Article 3 courts say that. So all these talking points are irrelevant and not dispositive of whether this young man who's been given a life sentence to a death prison simply because he was here illegally.
All right.
What drives Republicans so crazy about people here illegally?
I have to turn.
And another thing.
It's too much at this time.
You did say
it's too much at this time of the end of the table. All right, so I want to show you this picture. Take a look at this picture. You'll see a side-by-side of Congressman Riley Moore from West Virginia on one side, he's cheesing in front of the gates of the prison, doing the Christie Gnome, and next to him, you see Chris Van Hollen talking to the man himself. For both parties, right, this is an opportunity. You've got to get on the right side of this. Talk about the political spin. We heard the fight down here, but talk about the political utility of this.
Well, you see one of the senators from Maryland there in El Salvador. Yeah. What was the other one doing? She was here. She was in the U.S. and she was, posting in support of Senator Van Hollen, but she was busy at a roundtable on Medicaid. Mm-hmm. She's not putting quite as much focus on this issue, and I think that's really representative of what Democrats are doing. Some of them are coming out speaking very strongly in favor of Abrego Garcia and bringing him home. Others are kind of staying in the background here and saying, look, let's focus on the economy. Let's focus on the other things. And let's focus on if President Trump tries to deport American citizens like he said.
That was weird when he said that. That was weird when he said that. Okay, Drucker, come with me on a journey. Come with me.
After these two, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Come with me on a journey. let's talk about whole hog politics. We'll self-promote here this Friday. So we looked at in the most recent edition of the Whole Hog Politics note that you can have in your inbox every Friday for free. The headline is, Bro, what is going on with Trump and younger male voters? So let's start with, here's Donald Trump's job performance in the most recent average of polls. So he's underwater by 8 points. Where was it before? So let's look January to April, and you'll see this next full screen will appear by magic on the screen, and you're going to love it. And it's going to show you that at the end of January, Trump had a 48% net job approval rating, and this week it's 44. So sliding in the negatives are up too. We wanted to know why. Trump approval with young voters and Hispanic voters, part of what's driving this. So this is Echelon Insights poll, a high quality poll. So you see the drop here. This is Hispanic voters down substantially. How about Trump's approval with younger voters? Not so bad. Trump holding the line with younger voters. And how about dudes generally? Let's see, dudes generally. This is a Quinnipiac number, and you see that he's down 8 points with dudes. Now, what I read from you was that a coalition of younger voters, younger men, non-white voters, Hispanic and black men, younger men, helped propel Trump to victory. What do you see in those numbers? Are they softening up?
Well, his numbers are softening up, and that's pretty typical for presidents the longer they're in office. But notice that those numbers really aren't so bad.
No.
And they're particularly not so bad compared to Trump in the first term. And a little bit worse off than Joe Biden was at this point in his presidency. But I think what that tells you is that Trump actually has an extraordinary opportunity in his second term to come out a lot better with voters than he did the first time around. The question is whether he will take advantage of that opportunity. And right now, the person who's his biggest problem is himself, because he is attempting, we think, on any given day, wholesale global economic reformation. Some days it's on pause, some days it's on acceleration. That has driven the markets crazy, and that is causing a lot of uncertainty. Voters don't like uncertainty. It also tells a lot of voters that he's not necessarily focusing on the thing they hired him to do.
I know they do it
the most.
Biden did it. Trump's doing it. They do it. They get elected, and then they come in and they go, I know I said I was going to do this other stuff, but first, hold my beer, and I've got to do this other
To be
thing.
fair, the man has been talking about immigration for the totality of his
Hold on.
And tariffs.
There are
everything he said he would do.
Aaron, there are two sides to this.
Yes.
We just talked about the negative side, the problematic side. How he's handling illegal immigration and border security, voters are quite happy.
Very popular.
It's why I think he feels comfortable talking about the Abrego Garcia issue the way he does, because when voters feel as unsafe as they were during the Biden administration because of how that president handled border security.
You have to stop talking, because if you don't stop talking, we're not going to have a chance to talk with the panel about what we're going to eat for Easter dinner. And that's what matters here, David Drucker. That's what matters. So please, panel, stick with us. We're going to talk about that when we come back. And by the way, Elizabeth Vargas reports is at the top of the hour. The fate of the Menendez brothers hangs in the balance right now. My friend Elizabeth will talk with the Los Angeles District Attorney. That's coming up at 7 right here on NewsNation. Welcome back to the Hill. Holy Week observances are underway for Christians around the world as Easter approaches. At the Vatican, the leader of the Catholic Church hasn't made an appearance for now, at least because of his improved health. But Vice President J.D. Vance was spotted at St. Peter's Basilica for Good Friday services with his family. He's in Italy on a work trip. Pope Francis made his customary Holy Thursday visit to a prison in Rome. Unlike in previous years, he did not celebrate Mass or wash the feet of prisoners. After leaving, he told reporters, quote, "Every time I enter these doors, I ask myself, why them and not me?" Unable to attend this year's Stations of the Cross at the Colosseum, Pope Francis did write his meditations, offering this reflection: embrace God's economy in a world of implacable interests. And for our Jewish friends, of course, this week they are finishing up their commemoration of Passover, marking the escape from slavery in Egypt. This year, Easter and Passover beautifully overlap. So Christians are celebrating the resurrection on Sunday and Passover ending for the Jewish faith. It's a beautiful thing. So it's a nice time to talk about food. Obviously, it's a nice time to talk about food. And we're going to go down the line here. We're going to start because I know David is a gourmand. He is a gourmet. He can cook. He knows how to get down. What do you guys do for Passover? What's the secret?
Yeah, my mother and my wife deserve most of the credit, but always a brisket. And this year it was an 11-pound brisket.
An 11-pound brisket?
And we had a lot of people over. We had 5 kids, my 2 boys, my 3 nephews. A lot of eating.
And your sons can put it away. Yeah.
We have my mother's Sephardic, which is Mediterranean, which means fried matzo balls.
Ooh, okay.
A spinach pie.
All right.
And
we're moving
all the usual stuff.
We're moving it down the line.
Yeah.
Easter food.
I think I'm going there for the leftovers.
You're going there for the leftovers.
Pretty good. I don't know.
Anything for you? No.
I love the deviled eggs for Easter.
Hoppin' John.
Oh,
Greens,
nice. Yes, sir.
Neck bones and ham hocks and butter.
Will you really do it? Will you really do it this Sunday? Or no, he won't. He's going to be someplace
I'll be out of town.
He's going to be out of town.
But if I was here, that would be it.
Aaron, the last 10 seconds, what do you
Yeah, no, I don't cook, but we will be bringing dessert. I just don't know what that is yet.
It'll be nice, I'm sure. Well, thanks, guys, for being with us. Really appreciate you. And coming up this Sunday, our community comeback episode of The Hill Sunday. We're going to talk with the senior senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford, about his new book. We're going to talk to the former governor of Ohio, John Kasich, about his new book, about how faith inspires communities of strength. All of that and more this Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. You'll really dig it. We're really happy about it. Panel, we thank you, and thank you all for watching The Hill on NewsNation. Set your DVR to watch us at 6 o'clock Eastern. We'll be back Monday with Blake Berman. Hip, hip, hooray.